In the last race we'll take a quick look at here on this recap edition, which is in a way kind of a preview edition of the Matt Bernier Show, is the Breeders' Cup Sprint. This was a race, and it has always felt like a race this year anyway, that it's not a giant field. You may barely get 10, but it's quality, top to bottom. I think there's all really, really talented sprinters. Let's start off with the Phoenix, because the Phoenix could very easily be the key to this race. You had a horse like Promises Fulfilled, who I personally don't believe should be running in this race. Look, I have nothing to do with the horse. And Dale Romans, again, I say this over and over again, and I hope people really understand this, including connections that listen to any of this stuff. Obviously, I'm not questioning. Trainers know a hell of a lot more about animals than I do and where they should be placed. But at the same time, as a handicapper and all handicappers, you know, our job is to try to look through and see where horses fit better than others. I personally look at Promises Fulfilled and say, you know what? I think his speed at a mile could be more dangerous than his speed at 6 furlongs, because there's going to be some other company for him in the sprint, and he could very easily clear off and be controlling speed in a race like the Dirt Mile. But I understand Dale Roman's point, saying that, you know what, we want championship honors at the end of the year, and this is the way to do it, by running and winning in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. Well, going to have to, first things first, let's go back and take a look at the Phoenix, the race I've talked about, because you have this horse, you have Whitmore, and you have Limousine Liberal all exiting it. Here's the stretch run.
Elmore at the back, 45.09 seconds for the first half mile. Here comes Whitmore on the far outside after Promises Fulfilled. Limousine Liberal is in tight and is needing room in the final furlong. Whitmore, Promises Fulfilled, Limousine Liberal still hunting for racing room. Past the 16th pole, Promises Fulfilled with Whitmore. Promises Fulfilled.
I can make the case that Limousine Liberal was the most unlucky in there. If he had just gotten some clean running room, perhaps he gets the job done. Whitmore ran a bang-up race. And certainly Promises Fulfilled. He is a gutsy game horse. He is very easy to like. Like I said, I personally think he should be in the Dirt Mile. I think that's a better situation for him. And I realize that I'm in the minority there. Most people think he should be running in the sprint. I'm getting more and more intrigued with Limousine Liberal because he likes Churchill Downs. 6 furlongs, he has shown that he is plenty capable at that distance. There figures to be pace, because not only do you have Promises Fulfilled, you're likely to also have horses like Switzerland, who we'll talk about in a little bit. You may also get a horse like XY Jet, which it sounds like the goal is to get him in there. So, you know, there's gas. They're going to run. The sprint races generally are won up there on the front, pushing it. You know, you got to be relatively close. But all I'm saying is it feels like there's a real scenario where this thing could heat up early on, and it could perhaps help horses that are just off of it, and perhaps even some of the deeper closers. But more importantly, those ones that sit just off with a little bit of tactical ability, like a Limousine Liberal, I think he might be a little bit sneaky in here. The Vosburgh is going to be the race that produces your favorite. I have little doubt about that. Imperial Hint has been sensational this year. He's a dual Grade 1 winner. He won the Alfred Vanderbilt up at Saratoga, and then he came back, and this was his prep leading into the Breeders' Cup Sprint. This was the race at Belmont Park most recently, an absolute paid workout in the Grade 1 Vosburgh.
4.37 seconds. They're into the stretch. And Imperial Hint's under a hand ride here. Javier Castellano takes a peek back. There's no one coming. Mr. Crow is second. Silver Ride is third on the outside. It's just so easy. So easy for this little rocket ship. Imperial Hint geared down in the Vosburgh. And then it was Mr. Crow's second.
Now, I've said it, I think 3 or 4 times at this point. My concern with Imperial Hint is very much the concern that I had, or my thought, exiting the Churchill Downs Stakes earlier this year. Did he get enough out of that final prep? Visually, awesome. Awesome. Don't care that the speed figure wasn't that fast. He was never asked to run a step. The Vanderbilt, that's the race that you're using that as the example. If you think that he can just go out there and canter and just blitz a field. But my thought earlier this year with the Churchill Downs race, his prep in that race at Tampa Bay Downs against inferior company, he was just like this the whole time, Javier. He never had to move. When the real running started in that Churchill Downs Stakes, he couldn't go on with it. What happens when the real running starts in the Breeders' Cup Sprint on the heels of that Vosburgh, which looked Eerily similar to that race down at Tampa Bay Downs. My only concern with that horse, talent-wise, I think he is the most talented in the race, or arguably the most talented. Price also needs to be your guide. I think he is, without question, going to be the favorite. I love Imperial Hint. I think he's very cool. I'm getting more and more leery about, do I really want to go there with him in this spot? You also have to deal with last year's sprint champion and Eclipse Award-winning champion in Roy H., who it seems like he's finally back to feeling like the old Roy H. again. Here's the stretch run of the Santa Anita Sprint Championship.
Joining Distinctive B, Ransom the Moon down the outside, and then Edwards going left. It's Roy H on the outside of Distinctive B. Ransom the Moon is flat-footed as Roy H takes the lead, kicks away. It's Roy H reunited with Paco Lopez, repeating in the Santa Anita Sprint Championship and laying the foundation for a possible repeat.
Now, I'll tell you what, you get that effort from this horse, he can run with anyone. He can run with anyone in this spot. The beautiful thing about Roy H., he doesn't have to have the lead. He can sit just off, but he has that early foot that can put him into the run early. So you know what? Promises Fulfilled goes. XY Jet goes. Anybody else wants to go? Fine. Boom. He sits just off that flank. If they go unbelievably fast, if they go 43 for the half, he sits here and he's just as effective. Roy H., I liked him last year in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. Cashed out on him. Don't think he has been in as good form this year in 2018, but I'll tell you what, this is the closest. That race right there, the Santa Anita Sprint, that's the closest he has looked to the Roy H. that we had seen winning the Breeders' Cup Sprint last year out at Del Mar. We'll find out if he can ship into Louisville and get the job done 2 years in a row. If you're looking for sort of a fresh face, how about the 3-year-old? How about the Gallant Bob from up at Parks? Look, Firenze Fire. Say what you will, I still think he's probably better at the mile as well. But it sounds like the connections are going to go here, and rightfully so. You win the Gallant Bob, perhaps you back it up with the Breeders' Cup Sprint. Who knows? Who knows? Maybe there's a Sprint Championship awaiting you. Let's take a look. First things first. Here's the stretch run of that Gallant Bob.
And Forrest is given way 3 abreast now at the top of the stretch. 7 trumpets on the inside. Firenze Fire is in between, and Where She Told Me to Go running a big one on the far outside. Inside the final 8, 7 trumpets gives way. It's now down to Firenze Fire and Where She Told Me to Go. They're headed in for the lead with a 16th to go. Firenze Fire the inside. Where She Told Me to Go on the outside. Down to the finish, it's Firenze Fire. Firenze Fire prevails and wins it by a neck.
Had that horse on the outside get a little bit hungry, try to take a bite. But at the end of the day, Firenze Fire, he's another one. We talk about versatility. Good at a mile, good at 7/8, good at 6 furlongs. 2 turns he's won races at in the past, I believe, or at least run competitive, even though that's not what he wants to do. He is a 1-turn shorter kind of horse. If this thing, the interesting thing there too was he was as close as he was to the pace that day. I don't think that's his best running style. I think he's best coming from slightly off of it, if not deep closer. Problem is deep closer in a race like the Breeders' Cup Sprint. I just don't love the way that sets up for him. We'll find out what we get from him. I think he's talented. I think this is going to be maybe a little bit tough for him. But you know what? You never know. He wasn't embarrassed by Promises Fulfilled in the Alan Jerkins up at Saratoga. Maybe he can turn the tables this time around. And the last one we'll briefly touch on is a horse that I think many people have just sort of, they just don't think he's very good, or whatever the case may be. Switzerland. Switzerland could be a bit of a key to this race for a number of reasons. First things first, let's go back to his most recent start. This was in the DeFrancis Dash, and it was an impressive victory. Here's the stretch run.
3 wide in third. Lewis Field is out wide. Then Lakite out of the inside, and Always Sunshine as they straighten in. The half in 45.72 into the stretch now, and it's Switzerland and Fergal Lynch driving, opening up 5 lengths. It's wide open for second. The man on the outside, and Lakite down to the inside. Lakite's running a big one, trying to chase Switzerland down, but Switzerland much too much for them. And the Frank J. DeFrancis Memorial Dash, Switzerland to win by 3. Lakite was second, and then it was Sweet on the ladies.
Now, with Switzerland, the reason he could be the key to this race is because he has legit early speed, and I think his best option is to go. I don't think there's any question about it. I don't think you want to be trying to sit there with Imperial. You tried similar things to that in the past, and it just doesn't work. I think he's best when he is sent, go to the front. Now, I didn't like the lead change situation at the Francis Dash, but at the end of the day, he is a fast horse. He's in good form ever since Steve Asmussen got a hold of him. I think there's a real scenario where perhaps he doesn't win a race like this, but maybe he hurts other horses. Maybe he hurts a Promises Fulfilled. Maybe he hurts some of these other speeds that may go, whether it's an XY Jet or someone else. I think Switzerland could be a key to this race. Or I'm entirely wrong. And just from a class standpoint, he's not fast enough to go with those boys early on. I think this is really, again, it's not going to be a giant field, but I think this is, to me, one of the most intriguing races of the entire weekend because I think you've got quality top to bottom, the way the race could set up on paper, so many different aspects to this that I think are exciting. The Breeders' Cup Sprint, it's going to be over in the blink of an eye, but it might be one of the best races in the entire weekend. And we're going to button things up on that note. If you've been listening to this, thank you for doing so. Before we run through all that kind of stuff, let's quick throw up the DRFTV schedule of events for the upcoming week. And again, you're going to have plenty of Breeders' Cup-centric items. You're going to have a ton of Breeders' Cup-focused videos. Those will be out all over the place. Video.drf.com as well as the DRF YouTube channel. You're going to have, obviously, DRF Bets Races of the Day. You're going to have Formulator Angles. You have the Players Podcast. You'll have the Matt Bernier Show coming up at the end of the week. And you'll have the latest edition of Out of the Gate. If you've been listening to this live, thank you for doing so. Live.drf.com, livestream.com, the Daily Racing Forum's Twitter handle, @DRF Inside Post, or the Daily Racing Forum's Facebook page. If you're listening to this in podcasts, like most of you do, YouTube, SoundCloud, iTunes, video.drf.com, as well as Spotify. YouTube, click subscribe, give us the thumbs up. iTunes or Apple Podcasts, write us a review, give us a positive rating, greatly appreciated. Questions, comments, concerns, fire away at me on Twitter, @Bernier_Matt. I will be paying attention to that, again, for the most part, leading in through this week and into next week, just because next week is the big dance. We're finally there. If you don't like baseball, you're probably going to want to tune me out over the next week outside of racing, just simply because the Sox, they kick off the World Series tomorrow night with the Dodgers at Fenway. I think tomorrow night's not supposed to be terrible. I think it's going to be in the 40s. Wednesday night sounds like it could be quite cold with the wind. I want to say high 20s, low 30s. So not particularly the best baseball weather, but you know what? It is what it is. It's the Fall Classic. That's why we're here. And it's fall in New England. That's what you get. Again, we'll be back. I'll button up some of the other divisions on the preview edition coming up on Friday. We'll go over a number of them, for the most part, all of them, with the exception of the turf sprint and the juvenile turf sprint, as I made mention at the top, simply because I'm not good with turf sprints. So I'm not the one you should be listening to. Listen to one of the other handicappers that we've got out here, just because I'm not going to BS you. I'm not good at them. So I don't really, you know. And who knows? By the way, this will be the year that I smoke both of them big prices, but neither here nor there. Thank you for listening to this. Like I said, questions, comments, concerns beneath the YouTube video player or fire away over on Twitter @Bernier_Matt. Until we speak again, or until I speak to you guys again. Whatever you play, wherever you play, wherever you play, however you play. I can't even speak at this point. We're just going to kill this right now. Best of luck. Talk to you in a few days. The Matt Bernier Show.